So we're going to start off with our good friend Joe Rogan. Now, you know Joe Rogan gets 11 million views per show he does, which dwarfs all the rest of the media. And so they're going nuts that they can't control the narrative anymore. And so that's why they always trash Joe Rogan as some kind of extreme right-winger, even though he endorsed Bernie Sanders. That was part of it. That was the first part of it, right? And that's when the Democrats start calling him a right-winger. Isn't that funny? So he's none of the things they say he is. He's actually a thoughtful guy. And they've been calling for him to be censored because he spread so much misinformation. And so if you watch this show, you know the biggest purveyor of misinformation is the government, Joe Biden, and the government. And then the second is the corporate media. That's why we have a show. We're here to debunk the corporate media because they're always lying. And they're always full of propaganda. So someone was... So, you know, like when Sanjay Gupta from CNN went on Joe Rogan's show, Joe Rogan schooled Sanjay Gupta for 3 hours. And what you would think it would be the other way. The doctor would teach the guy who announces guys fighting in cages. You think oh, no. Oh, look at that. Oh, nice. Some of the booch.
What?
We forgot to turn on a light here, and now it's on. Oh, gosh. It looked fantastic. So Joe Rogan schools them. And if they want to have a fact checker on the Joe Rogan show, why don't you just bring the people that Joe Rogan has on his show on your show? They won't do that. So they've been passing this around. It says we probably won't see Josh Zepps on Joe Rogan's podcast for a while. And this, I should have showed you how many likes it got. It got thousands of likes. And this is why. Watch this.
For young boys in particular, there's an adverse risk associated with the vaccine. It's like a 2 to 4-fold increase in the instances of myocarditis.
Yes, but you know what?
Hospitalization.
You know that there's an increased risk of myocarditis among that age cohort from getting COVID as well, which exceeds the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true. No. I don't think it's true that there's an increased risk of myocarditis from people catching COVID that are young versus increased risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
No, there is. There's both.
Well, let's look that up because I don't think that's true. Myocarditis is more common after COVID-19 infection than vaccination. But is this with children? Yeah, we're talking about young people.
Men and boys aged under 30 after this is what it says here.
With children is the issue.
Well, no, we were talking about 15-year-olds.
Well, we're talking about young children.
Male child. 12 to 17.
12 to 17, more likely to develop myocarditis within 3 months of catching COVID at a rate of 450 cases per million infection. This compares to 67 cases of myocarditis per million at the same time following their second dose of Pfizer.
Yeah, so you're about 8 times likelier to get myocarditis from getting COVID than from getting the vaccine.
That's interesting.
Now, that
is not what I've read before, but also it's like, even when we're reading these things, it's like, what are we getting this from? Was this from the VAERS report? But even from the VAERS reports, when they report this stuff, it's like the amount of people that report, it's the underreporting.
So this guy says we probably won't see Josh Zepps on Rogan's podcast for a while. Well, if Joe Rogan was anything like the scumbag mainstream media, he might be right. But you probably will see Josh Zepps on Joe Rogan's show because Joe isn't an insecure authoritarian, and I'm guessing he's not like that at all. No. Joe's a regular solid dude who actually enjoys those kind of conversations, which is why he fucking has them. And he pioneered the 3-hour conversation that no one is having anymore, which is why no one watches mainstream news and no one watches mainstream media. No one watches the late night TV shows. No one watches those shows, those pre-planned interviews that go on for 4 seconds and talk about absolutely nothing. And then they throw a ping pong ball into a glass of beer. That's not real entertainment. That's not real shows. That is the equivalent of Carrot Top for late night television. That is one step below tickling.
So I hear George Clooney is quite a prankster. That's
I never get tired of that question, huh, Kurt?
I imagine Clooney has an assistant that comes to your trailer like, now George is going to prank you, so act like you're really into it because he gets upset. You know, he's known for his pranks.
So what did happen? So to me, it looks like some people were passing that around saying CNN showed that, saying, see, Joe Rogan needs a fact checker. See, he gets shit wrong. No, Joe Rogan's doing a podcast, and he's having a conversation with some guy, and they had a disagreement. So what did Joe Rogan do? Did he lie about a statistic? No, he looked it up in real time, and they went over it. And they found that article, and then Joe says, is that peer, he, in his head is like, you don't know what you're reading all the time. He was right to be skeptical, but first what he said was this. He goes, if anyone was going to make me look dumb on the podcast, I'm glad it's Josh Zepps because I love him and he's awesome. However, this is why I was confused. And so there you go. Can you imagine CNN thanking someone who corrected their bullshit? Could you imagine that? Can you imagine any establishment outlet or any authority admitting to even the slightest mistake about anything? I'm asking for real, no joke. Can you? No. In fact, when Joe Rogan got Sanjay Gupta to admit it on his show that they'd been lying about ivermectin and pushing propaganda to make people think it was some kind of poison and not a human medicine, then they went and lied again about it on CNN after Joe Rogan got him to admit it on it. Isn't that amazing? So, yeah. And here's why Joe Rogan was confused. And he links to this story. It's in The Guardian, and this was months ago, and it says U.S. researchers say teenagers are more likely to get vaccine-related myocarditis than end up in the hospital with COVID. Here's the thing their analysis of medical data suggests that boys aged 12 to 15 with no underlying medical conditions are 4 to 6 times more likely to be diagnosed with vaccine-related myocarditis than ending up in a hospital with COVID for over a 4-month period. Now, that's what Joe was in good faith referring to, an article he read in a mainstream establishment newspaper, and he brought this up with Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay Gupta was like, oh, didn't know that. They all talked about it, blah, blah. Well, it turns out since then, some of the numbers in this study have been retracted. So this study has been retracted, just so you know. But that's what Joe was referring to. And by the way, at the same time, they looked it up. And by the way, the biggest purveyors of lies about COVID are the establishment and the government. Okay. So then Josh Zepps tweets out, to people who think that Joe Rogan is closed-minded or that he'd get pissed when I disagree with him, here's Exhibit A. I love the guy. And he shows Joe's tweet of, if anyone was good, that one I just showed you. That Joe Rogan to get pissed off. He brings on people with different opinions of him all the time. That's why it's a really popular show. Because it's not a bubble. Yeah. What's that?
Everything's elevator music now. I just don't want to hear nice corporate elevator music. I'd like to hear people talking and disagreeing about things.
And Josh goes on to say, I hope readers realize that Rogan enjoys this kind of pushback. I hardly shut him down. He's a big boy. That's exactly right. And it turns out Joe Rogan wasn't even wrong. It turns out he was right to be skeptical of whatever that article that Jamie pulled up on his show was and that him and Josh were talking about. So this guy, he's a MD, MPH, I think that stands for miles per hour. So he's a very fast doctor.
That guy's good. I watch him sometimes.
He's a doctor at the speed of science. So this guy says Joe Rogan is right. At some ages for men, for some doses of specific mRNA shots, the risk of vaccine-induced myocarditis exceeds the risk of myocarditis from infection. It was proven by the UK group. We have to be honest about this fact to have productive conversations. So Joe Rogan wasn't even wrong. But wait, there was a letter signed by 270 respected pot growers and veterinarians. Son of a bitch.
Some concerned chiropractors want him shut down.
And then he links to this chart on his Substack. And it says here, UK now reports myocarditis stratified by age and sex after vaccine or after having SARS-CoV-2. This was the Nature Medicine paper revisited, and it's shocking, it says. It says, this was the key figure in Nature Medicine's paper published on December 14th, 2021. It showed clearly that myocarditis after vaccination, in this case Moderna dose 2, was higher than myocarditis SARS-CoV-2 infection for people younger than 40. And then he lists this graph. And so there you go. And I just love how people keep using settled science. Tell that to Newton. Tell that to Einstein. Because everybody thought the science was settled until Einstein came along and said, no, that's not how it works. It actually works like this. And science is always being tested. It has to stand up to scrutiny. People go, I believe science. Well, if you believe science, then guess what you're doing? You're turning science into a religion. What's that?
You mean believe in?
Yeah, I believe in science.
Yeah, right.
You don't believe in science. Science is about testing hypotheses and trying to knock them down. And if it can stand up to scrutiny, that doesn't make you a bad person because you question the results of someone's experiment or you have a different idea. That's what science is. Science is about testing ideas, including the settled science. That's how we got Einstein. That's how we know that fat doesn't make you fat anymore. That sugar does. Okay. By the way, could someone get this info to that doctor at the Grasshopper Farms? Boy, are they going to be embarrassed, I bet, huh? I'm starting to think Dr. Fauci might not be science itself. I'm starting to think that. Tony Science.
Is that the avatar of science on this walking this earth?
I'm starting to think science is all about debate and questions and research and not consensus-based belief system for, Democrats.
Also, that guy Josh Epps, I would just say, I always liked that guy. We used to have him on my old podcast in New York, and he's one of the few people that defended me years ago when I was getting smeared by
no
the media
kidding.
On Chankin the Young Harkonnens or whatever it's called.
No
he was
kidding.
Yeah, Chank was going in on me.
The middle-aged McCarthyites.
Yeah, I never met Chank. And I didn't even watch what Chank was saying about me, but I know somebody else told me. Josh was like, "Oh yeah, he was defending you on there." He's a good dude, Josh Epps. I like him a lot.
We had a contentious, but I was in a bad mood one night after a primary loss in 2015 or 16 for Bernie Sanders, and he came on to say Bernie, anyway, we disagreed on things, and I was really in an ornery mood, and he didn't hold that against me. He invited me on his show.
Yeah, right. He's nice.
Yeah, I did his show later on after that. Yeah, so I think Josh Epps is a very stand-up guy. Also, even though, we might disagree on politics.
Well, even though I don't want someone with an Australian accent telling me anything about American politics.
I think that it might have been
part of the annoyance.
I think that might have been one of the things I said or something. I might have said something like that.
I feel the same way.
Well, that's yeah. That's how so let's see if is that it? Okay, so I don't have anything else. So that's the thing. So that's the crazy thing going around. And I love how people say, well, there should be they should have why doesn't Joe bring out another doctor to debunk the do you understand? That's people have said that to me. No, you're being bombarded with the establishment narrative about COVID. I'm here to show you where they're lying and where they're not providing context and where they're trying to bullshit you and fearmonger you. That's what this show's about. This show isn't about giving a platform to fearmongering, propagandizing corporatists. That's not, I'm here to debunk those, and I give a platform to people who push back against the ubiquitous propaganda that we are bombarded with. And that's what Joe Rogan does too.
Well, Jimmy, also, you think after Sanjay Gupta look like a punk like that, they're never going to come on, and they're like, I'm above talking to you. That's why they want the deplatforming, so that they never have to talk to the likes of you.
That's right. That is right. You are right. We added a second show, January 26th in Raleigh, and we're going to be in Philadelphia on February 20th. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all our tickets. And while you're there, become a premium member. Get access to all our premium videos.